Rain hammered the neon streets, blurring the city into streaks of silver and red. Elowen Hart stumbled, clutching a folder that could ruin powerful men, unaware she had already walked straight into danger. A shadow loomed tall, controlled, impossibly calm amid chaos. Lee Ji-hyun's gaze locked on hers, ice-meeting fire, and for the first time in years, a spark ignited something forbidden in him: protection, obsession, desire. Time froze. The world shrank to the storm, her heartbeat, his presence. Welcome to my channel, fam. Please like, share, and subscribe. The next day, Elowen awoke in a small, dimly lit room. Her wrists bore marks from ropes she barely remembered. Outside, the muffled hum of the city suggested life continued without care for her fate. The door creaked, and a figure appeared: Lee Ji-hyun. His black suit was immaculate, aura unyielding, yet eyes betrayed the first hint of unease. "You shouldn't have run," he said softly, voice even but edged with warning. Elowen swallowed, chest tight, yet met his gaze. "I didn't," she began. But he cut her off with a small shake of his head. Later that night, rain streaked the windows of the penthouse. Elowen sat at a polished table, papers spread before her: contracts, surveillance reports, warnings disguised as numbers. Lee Ji-hyun's presence was silent but suffocating, a shadow at her shoulder. He observed quietly, every twitch, every glance, protective yet commanding. "You're out of your depth," he said, voice low. "But maybe," his tone softened unexpectedly, "you're exactly what I need." A few days later, Elowen ventured to the city's underground archives. Lee Ji-hyun followed discreetly, unseen but vigilant. A rival approached her, words honeyed, eyes greedy. Heat flared within Ji-hyun as he stepped closer, hand brushing the small of her back, not too forceful, but enough to stake his claim. Elowen's pulse quickened, caught between fear and an unspoken pull. The man stumbled, noticing too late the calm fury in Ji-hyun's stare. By the end of the week, small gestures began to accumulate. Her coffee always arrived at her desk, her emails flagged with silent protection, her schedule subtly adjusted to avoid danger she didn't yet understand. Elowen noticed, reluctant but intrigued. The tension between them thickened, possessive yet tender, frightening yet magnetic. Later that night, a storm rolled over the city. Elowen found herself trapped in a flood of rain outside a high-rise. Lee Ji-hyun appeared as if conjured by the storm itself, umbrella held over her, coat clinging to him, every movement deliberate. "You think you can face this alone?" he asked. The words carried power, warning, and a strange tenderness that made her stomach knot. She had no answer. The following morning, news spread of a hostile takeover in Ji-hyun's corporation, enemies probing his empire. Elowen's inadvertent presence had complicated matters. Ji-hyun moved with precision, protecting her from every angle, yet never letting her forget she had entered his world as a target, now a challenge he couldn't resist. The next day, Elowen found herself escorted through Ji-hyun's skyscraper headquarters. His men moved silently around them, a fortress of unseen eyes and quiet strength. She couldn't deny the thrill, nor the dread, as she realized just how much of this world was controlled by him. Ji-hyun's hand brushed hers briefly as they passed a security checkpoint, almost imperceptible, but enough to make her pulse spike. Later that afternoon, he led her into a private office, sleek and modern, yet intimidating in its precision. The walls were lined with confidential files, the air sharp with the scent of polished wood and leather. "You don't belong here," he said, but his eyes softened when they met hers. "Yet somehow, you've already changed it." Elowen swallowed, unsure whether it was an observation or a warning. A few days later, Elowen was cornered by a rival from her own industry. Flattery masked greed, but Ji-hyun arrived silently behind her. His hand clamped gently on her shoulder, a silent claim. "She is not yours," he stated flatly. The rival blinked, caught between fear and astonishment. Elowen felt something inside shift: protection, possession, jealousy, all coiled tightly in a single, invisible cord. By the end of the week, subtle gestures continued, a note tucked into her folder, a bottle of water left on her desk, his presence at events she didn't expect. Ji-hyun was everywhere, yet nowhere, watching, guarding, reminding her of the power he held and the power he was willing to give. She began to notice small cracks in her resistance, small moments of longing she tried to ignore. Later that night, thunder rolled across the skyline. Ji-hyun arrived at her apartment unexpectedly, soaked, coat clinging to his form, presence commanding. "Why are you here?" she asked, heart pounding. "Because you shouldn't face this alone," he replied simply. The words carried warmth, threat, and unspoken desire. Elowen's defenses faltered, leaving her trembling in the space between fear and attraction. A few days later, the tension broke when a misunderstanding threatened to undo weeks of fragile trust. A false rumor painted her as a traitor in Ji-hyun's empire. He confronted her, eyes stormy, voice tight with controlled fury. "You think I could believe that?" she whispered, desperate to reach him. Ji-hyun's hand found hers again, almost tenderly. "I don't trust them," he said. "But I do trust you. Show me I'm right." By the following morning, danger escalated, a rival syndicate made their move. Elowen became an unwilling pawn, her knowledge and presence making her a target. Ji-hyun reacted with calculated violence, sweeping through the city like a storm. Every enemy moved at his mercy, yet his thoughts never left her. Each risk he took was measured, yet fueled by obsession, desire, and an undeniable need to keep her safe. Later that night, Elowen sat in a penthouse suite overlooking the city, exhaustion painting her features. Ji-hyun appeared silently, standing close enough for her to feel his warmth, his breath. No words were needed. Their eyes met, electric, dangerous, soft. The unspoken pull between them was unbearable, a mix of fear, attraction, and longing that made her chest ache. A few days later, their closeness deepened. Ji-hyun arranged small acts of care, her favorite tea waiting in the office, files pre-sorted for her ease, messages of reassurance when she faced threats. Elowen, resistant yet drawn, began to realize she was not just a participant in his world, she was becoming its heartbeat, and he, impossibly, was becoming hers. If you're enjoying this story, kindly subscribe, share, like, and comment below. Your support keeps the story alive. The next morning, the city hummed with uneasy tension. Elowen awoke to find Ji-hyun standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows of her suite, arms crossed, watching the skyline as though predicting the storms to come. He turned when she entered the room, eyes dark and unreadable. "Sleep well?" he asked, voice calm but edged with something sharper. She hesitated, aware of the invisible thread pulling her closer to him even as she fought it. Later that afternoon, Elowen was summoned to a high-level meeting within Ji-hyun's empire. The boardroom was austere, every surface gleaming under the harsh lights. Ji-hyun's presence was magnetic, commanding the room without a word, yet always aware of her location. Another executive lingered too long near her, offering polite compliments tinged with ulterior motives. Ji-hyun's hand brushed hers under the table, subtle yet possessive. She felt the heat of his gaze burn into the back of her neck. A few days later, the tension escalated when a former associate from Ji-hyun's past returned, flirty and smug. He laughed too close, words edged with danger. Ji-hyun's jaw tightened, but his control never broke. Later that night, alone in his private office, he pulled Elowen close, forehead resting against hers. "Do you understand what you've done to me?" he murmured. Her breath caught. The line between desire and danger blurred, leaving her dizzy and uncertain. The following morning, danger became tangible. A car outside her apartment exploded, an obvious warning. Elowen froze, stomach twisting, but Ji-hyun appeared moments later, calm, collected, yet his hands trembled just enough. He swept her into a protective embrace, whispering, "I promised I'd never let anything happen to you. I meant it." She clung to him, realizing for the first time how utterly dependent she had become on his protection and how impossibly fierce his devotion was. Later that week, the slow-burn chemistry intensified. Ji-hyun's touches became more deliberate, placing a hand over hers when they walked, guiding her away from danger, leaving small gifts, notes, and tokens of affection. Each gesture carried his signature, possessive, loving, and intoxicating. Elowen, simultaneously resisting and longing for his attention, felt her heart betray her attempts at emotional distance. A few days later, a misunderstanding struck like lightning. A rumor spread that Ji-hyun had used her as leverage in a deal she knew nothing about. She confronted him, eyes wide with fear and anger. Ji-hyun's expression softened as he stepped close, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "I would never use you," he said firmly. "I might fight the world for you, but never betray you." The sincerity in his eyes left her trembling. That evening, a storm rolled across the city. Ji-hyun insisted on staying with her, watching over her as rain hammered against the windows. Their proximity became electric, the quiet intimacy charged with unspoken desire. Elowen could feel the magnetic pull between them, the desire, the tension, the possessive edge that made her pulse race. For the first time, she realized that escaping him might be impossible. A few days later, Ji-hyun orchestrated a subtle show of protection. She found herself surrounded by his men during a tense negotiation, threats dissipating the moment he appeared. His gaze never left hers, a silent reminder that she was not just an asset, she was his obsession, his weakness, and his world. If you're enjoying this story, kindly subscribe, share, like, and comment below. Your support keeps the story alive. Later that night, the penthouse was quiet except for the rhythmic tapping of rain against the windows. Elowen sat on the edge of the bed, tension radiating from her as she replayed the day's events. Ji-hyun entered silently, his presence overwhelming even in the dark. He moved with a predator's grace, circling her as though he could read her every thought. "You think you can handle this world alone?" he asked, voice low and dangerous. She looked up, defiance mixed with vulnerability. "I don't need anyone to save me." The next day, Ji-hyun demonstrated his relentless watchfulness. She noticed small changes, a guard near her office, a discreet message confirming her safety, even a new coffee order waiting at her favorite cafe. Each gesture was a silent declaration. She belonged to him, and he would go to any length to protect her. Yet, she felt both empowered and trapped by his devotion. A few days later, tension escalated when a charming new associate arrived, someone who lingered just a little too long near Elowen, laughing at jokes only she found amusing. Ji-hyun's normally calm demeanor cracked, just slightly. Later that night, he cornered her in the private library, eyes dark with a mixture of jealousy and longing. "Do you feel his hands where mine should be?" he asked softly, voice barely above a whisper. Elowen's heart raced. I don't know," she admitted. The admission made her feel exposed, yet utterly alive under his gaze. That evening, danger arrived in the form of an unexpected kidnapping threat. Elowen was seized while leaving a late-night meeting, whisked into a blacked-out van. Panic clawed at her chest. Minutes later, Ji-hyun stormed into the room she was held in, precise and unstoppable. His fury was a physical force, crushing anyone who dared stand in his way. He lifted her into his arms, holding her tight. "I promised. I'll never let them hurt you," he growled, voice fierce yet tender. She felt tears prick at her eyes, shaken by the intensity of his devotion. A few days later, Elowen and Ji-hyun were confined together in the secluded villa he had prepared for her recovery. Their proximity made restraint nearly impossible. Ji-hyun sat across from her, every movement deliberate, every word weighted with desire. She realized the depth of her own feelings, the way her heart betrayed her attempts at independence. Later that night, the storm outside mirrored the tension between them. A candle flickered on the table, casting shadows that danced like their unspoken emotions. In a moment charged with emotion, Ji-hyun closed the distance, brushing a stray hair from her face. His eyes bore into hers, filled with need and longing. "I can't keep pretending I'm okay just standing beside you," he admitted, voice shaking with uncharacteristic vulnerability. Elowen's breath hitched, heart hammering. He leaned closer, their foreheads touching, and the world seemed to shrink until nothing existed but the magnetic pull between them. The moment intensified as they faded to black, emotions raw and electrifying. The following morning, Elowen awoke to find Ji-hyun watching over her sleep, soft but unyielding. Their first night of intimacy had left an invisible mark, neither of them could deny the change. Small touches, stolen glances, subtle protection became constant reminders of the bond forming between them. She was no longer just a prisoner or an asset, she had become his weakness, the center of his world, and the object of his obsession. If you're loving this story, kindly subscribe, share, like, and comment below. Your support keeps the story alive. The following morning, the city seemed oblivious to the storm brewing inside the villa. Elowen moved quietly through the halls, her mind restless. Ji-hyun watched her every step, not out of mistrust but an instinctive need to protect her. When she reached for a book, he appeared silently beside her, hand brushing hers just enough to make her pulse spike. "You're tempting fate," he murmured, lips close to her ear. Elowen shivered, a mix of fear and thrill coursing through her. Later that night, a masked party at Ji-hyun's corporate headquarters became the stage for tension. Elowen, dressed in elegant black, tried to blend in, but eyes followed her with predatory interest. Ji-hyun's hand found hers beneath the table, fingers gripping possessively. Every flirtatious glance from others drew a low growl from him, restrained only by the polished veneer of the evening. After the gala, in the privacy of the penthouse, he released her hand, voice tight. "You belong with me, do not forget it." A few days later, danger struck unexpectedly. A rival Mafia faction sent a cryptic message. Elowen had been marked as a bargaining tool. Ji-hyun's calm demeanor cracked into controlled fury. He called in his most trusted lieutenants, every move precise, every instruction calculated. "Find her before they make their first move. I don't care what it costs," he barked, voice sharp as a blade. Elowen, though frightened, found solace in his determination. She realized just how deeply he had embedded himself into every part of her life, body, and mind. That evening, tension bled into desire. Ji-hyun and Elowen were alone in his study, surrounded by books and the faint aroma of burning wood. He approached silently, voice low and intimate. "Every day you defy me, I fall harder," he admitted. She swallowed hard, emotion and longing tightening her chest. The world outside ceased to exist as he drew closer, hand brushing her cheek, fingers tracing the curve of her jaw. Their breaths mingled, the closeness charged the room. Again, they faded to black, letting emotions do the talking in place of words. The next morning, a sense of normalcy seemed impossible. Ji-hyun left for meetings but ensured she was never far from his watchful eyes. Small gestures, a protective note slipped under her door, a hot drink waiting at the kitchen counter were constant reminders of his obsessive devotion. Elowen, torn between pride and desire, struggled to assert independence while being irresistibly drawn to him. She began to understand the duality of his nature, ruthless in public, tender in private. Later that week, a casual dinner invitation turned into a trap. A rival associate, overly friendly, pressed too close, testing boundaries. Ji-hyun's control snapped, his arm sweeping her behind him protectively. "Do not touch what belongs to me," he growled, and the threat was clear. Elowen's cheeks flushed, not from shame, but from the raw intensity radiating from him. For the first time, she understood fully that she had become his weakness, the only thing capable of softening the impenetrable fortress of his heart. A few days later, Ji-hyun arranged a private getaway to a secluded cabin by the mountains. Snow fell silently outside as they explored the quiet, each step a careful dance of proximity and restraint. The isolation allowed them to shed the daily pressures of their world, exposing vulnerabilities. Ji-hyun admitted his fears, losing her, failing to protect her, letting desire cloud judgment. Elowen, moved by his honesty, let herself rest against him, allowing warmth and trust to replace fear. If you're loving this story, kindly subscribe, share, like, and comment below. Your support keeps the story alive. The following morning, a chilling message arrived at Ji-hyun's office. A rival faction had kidnapped Elowen during the night. Panic and fury collided in his chest, but his exterior remained calm, cold, calculated, lethal. He called his men immediately, voice slicing through the tension. "Locate her. I want her unharmed. Do not fail me." Elowen, bound and hidden in an abandoned warehouse, fought to steady her breathing. Fear threatened to overwhelm her, but thoughts of Ji-hyun gave her courage. "He will come for me. He always comes." Later that night, Ji-hyun tracked her signal to the warehouse. Every step was deliberate, silent. The moonlight cut through shattered windows, illuminating dust and danger. Gunfire erupted as he entered, but he moved like a storm, unstoppable. Elowen's eyes widened as she saw him, bloodied, unshaken, and every inch the man she had learned to trust, love, and fear. When he reached her, time seemed to freeze. He cut her bindings with precision, his hands trembling only slightly as he held her close. "I've got you," he whispered. The next day, back in the safety of his penthouse, the emotional fallout began. Elowen curled into him on the couch, trembling from adrenaline and relief. Ji-hyun pressed her close, fingers threading through her hair. "You are my weakness," he admitted softly, voice raw with emotion. "And I will protect you, even if the world collapses around us." She felt her own heart open fully, no longer resistant, yet still wary of the dangers surrounding them. Their connection deepened, intimate yet restrained, passion simmering beneath layers of longing. A few days later, Ji-hyun hosted a corporate gala, danger lurking in the form of whispered threats and rival spies. Elowen accompanied him reluctantly, adorned in a shimmering gown, elegance masking her inner tension. Every flirtatious glance from others triggered Ji-hyun's possessive glare. Under the chandeliers, he held her hand tightly, murmuring, "Do not let anyone touch you, not even with their eyes." The subtle touch, almost imperceptible, sent shivers down her spine, their chemistry radiating quietly yet intensely. That evening, a confrontation with a known rival escalated into an ambush outside the gala. Ji-hyun moved with lethal grace, shielding Elowen, every motion precise and protective. Adrenaline mingled with fear as they escaped into the night, the city's neon lights casting shadows over their path. Once safe, he pressed her against his chest, forehead to forehead, breath mingling. "Do you understand now?" he asked, voice low and commanding. Elowen nodded, heart pounding with a mix of terror and exhilaration. "You are mine, I am yours." Later that week, Ji-hyun's obsession manifested in small, intimate gestures, leaving warm drinks, soft notes, and unexpected gifts that spoke of thoughtfulness and devotion. Elowen, torn between independence and surrender, began to realize the depth of his love, fierce and unyielding. She caught him watching her from across the room, gaze heavy with longing and possessiveness. Each glance pulled her closer, the tension of push and pull chemistry building into a slow-burning desire that neither dared name aloud. Enjoying the story? Kindly subscribe, share, like, and comment below to support the journey of Ji-hyun and Elowen. The following dawn, Ji-hyun prepared for the final confrontation. Every detail of the rival faction's base was mapped, every exit accounted for. Elowen, now safe for the first time in days, watched him with a mix of awe and fear. "Are you sure?" she asked, voice trembling. Ji-hyun's eyes softened, but his jaw remained hard. "I will bring this to an end. For you. For us." Later that day, Ji-hyun infiltrated the enemy compound alone. Shadows clung to him like a second skin, movements fluid and lethal. Each step brought him closer to the leaders who dared threaten Elowen. Gunfire and chaos erupted, but his focus never wavered. When he finally reached the room where she had been held, he found it empty and mocking, yet predictable. A single clue led him outside to the rooftop where the last standoff awaited. Elowen, sensing the danger, had insisted on following in secret. She crept behind Ji-hyun, heart hammering in sync with his precise movements. When the final enemy emerged, intent on harming her, Ji-hyun's fury exploded. He moved like a force of nature, deflecting, striking, and protecting. The battle was fierce, tension slicing through every moment, their lives hanging by a thread. Finally, the last threat fell, defeated. Ji-hyun turned, eyes blazing, and saw Elowen, safe, trembling, yet defiant. Later that night, back in the penthouse, the adrenaline faded, leaving space for emotions long suppressed. Elowen pressed herself into Ji-hyun's chest, tears slipping freely. "I thought I was your prisoner forever," she whispered. Ji-hyun cupped her face, eyes glistening. "You are never a prisoner. You are my weakness, and my reason. I would burn the world to keep you safe." The intimacy between them was tender yet charged, their breathless closeness a testament to the journey they had survived together. A few days later, Ji-hyun publicly declared his feelings in a private ceremony for friends and trusted allies. "Elowen Hart, you are mine not by power, but by choice. Always by choice," he said, voice resonating with sincerity. Elowen, heart full, stepped forward, echoing his vow, "I choose you, Ji-hyun, always." Their kiss sealed the promise, a fade-to-black moment of passion and connection, free of fear and danger. Weeks later, peace settled over their world. Elowen moved into Ji-hyun's penthouse, filling the spaces with warmth, laughter, and life. They shared quiet mornings, tender touches, and whispered confessions. Ji-hyun watched her from across the room, still protective, still possessive, but now soft, gentle, and completely devoted. She, in turn, trusted him fully, no longer fearing abandonment. By the following spring, life blossomed. Elowen pressed her hand against her growing belly, tears of joy slipping down her cheeks. Ji-hyun fell to his knees, overwhelmed with gratitude and love. "I will protect you both," he vowed softly, "with everything I am." Their home, once a place of tension and danger, now held laughter, warmth, and the promise of a future together. The city, once shadowed by fear, now watched silently as the couple thrived. Their enemies were gone or subdued. Ji-hyun's empire remained, but it was tempered with a new sense of purpose, love and protection over fear and power. Elowen, the woman who had entered as a prisoner, had become the heart of his world, his weakness that made him stronger, his soul mate that completed him. Months later, the couple stood together on the terrace, the skyline of the city beneath them. The sun dipped low, painting the world in gold. Ji-hyun wrapped his arms around Elowen, hand over hand on her belly. "Once, danger ruled our world," he murmured. "Now, love does." She leaned into him, breathless, safe, and finally home. The story ended not with shadows, but with light. Together, they had turned fear into strength, danger into devotion, and captivity into freedom. Life would bring challenges, but they would face them as one, forever. Loved the story? Kindly subscribe, share, like, and comment below to support Ji-hyun and Elowen's journey and support the channel.